Hey guys, I don't know if you have actually tried to apply to any tech companies. Like, I'm talking about North American FANG companies, like software companies. So, companies like Netflix, Google, Facebook, and all these kind of companies. If you have ever tried to look into the company culture or photos of the offices and stuff, you would notice a lot of like people from around the world in one place. And it's fair to sort of say that at least in the tech industry, we have when I'm talking about tech industry, I at least in this context, I'm more specifically talking about internet companies or software companies, as compared to, let's say, hardware companies or other related industries as well. So software companies like the game industries, whatever has to do with digital side of things, they tend to have more diversity compared to, let's say, the physical hardware industry and things like that. And we already touched about creating the ease of business in tech in general in the last video. We talked about how internet companies, like, to create an internet company today, you have you have less investment that you need to put up front in order to start a tech company, and the amount of resources, at least the physical resources you need to start and run a tech company, is relatively less expensive and easier to sort of get started. So one of the things that people sort of question is, okay, is this diversity any good? What are the potential conflicts, or what are the potential demerits of this phenomena, if I could say? So why is diversity such a big thing now? Diversity and inclusion is also a actually a position or a responsibility in a tech companies these days. Like, there are people who are solely responsible for maintaining diversity in a tech company. Now, we'll also be talking about the criticisms from the other side, and that's also needed to be pointed out. And I do believe in some criticisms about it as well. But the reasons cannot, like, we need to explore both sides, alright? So, first things first, okay, you might also have noticed, if you've tried to apply to any of these tech companies, at least specifically the ones in the North American region, like the US or Canada, towards the bottom of the company description, you'll notice like companies saying that we are an equal opportunity provider, or equal something around those lines, right? So they are basically trying to say that we hire people regardless of what race, color, religion, whatever thing you belong to. Now, that's also a sign of modernization, which we also talked about in another video. We talked about what modernization means. Anyway, so about let's talk about the what is the reason behind all of this. The thing is, first of all, while you're creating tech companies or internet companies, now internet is used by almost every used by billions of people. Yes, like the majority of the country, whether you believe it or not, like over 50 or 60% of the world, of this planet, still does not have access to the internet. It's actually hard to believe in this time and age when you and I probably spend like most of our time on the screens, pretty much most of this day. And in this time and age, when most of the people don't have access to the internet, it's hard to believe that those kind of people also exist. So the thing is that we have billions of people in different regions, and internet has proliferated across different cultures, and it's being used differently by different people. It has different. Now it's not. I mean, although internet is the same if you go to, let's say, Japan or United States, the way you'll use, or the services that you'll use, it's not just the language change, but a lot of things change in the technology and everything that that a software needs to perform. If you go to different regions, everything changes, even in the internet domain. So one question that comes up is okay now, like when you're creating, let's say, a physical product, like let's say for example you're creating a toy, let's say a remote control car. One of the things you need to do is you need to make sure that people in your place or wherever you're selling to, the user or your customers, need to be able to first of all understand the product and use it, and three, be able to afford it, and sort of buy it and recommend it to others, so that you can have more sales. And otherwise there's no point in creating the product, right? So as a business, or at least, you need to create stuff that people actually want. Now, one of the ways that you do that is by understanding people. Now, who is the best person to understand your culture or your society than those who live in the same place or the same region? Now, internet is not exactly democratic in the sense, but democratic as in you don't have a central authority, or there's no kind of election. Now, there is no central person who owns the World Wide Web, although yes, CERN and like Tim Berners-Lee, who made the internet, he's not the one who's actually running the internet. Like, nobody owns the internet. Now, when people talk about decentralized internet, they're talking about decentralization of technologies, not the whole internet itself. I mean, yeah, it depends on different technologies, but essentially what I'm trying to say is that the World Wide Web is, at least in the form that it exists now, is not owned by anybody else. So therefore, everybody uses the same internet, apart from non-democratic countries like China, North Korea, or I guess Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure exactly. Okay, so a couple of countries. So a lot of countries, at least predominantly most of the countries, have at least most of the popular sites. You can access pretty much most of the sites on the internet freely, or at least you can find a way to access most of the sites. Like, if you're in China, yes, you can't access YouTube, but you can use VPN and then access internet. So, I mean, you're just a software away from accessing the World Wide Web if you really want to. But here's a question, right? For software companies, they want to create products that people want to use. And for software companies, there are like, the way you make money is actually one of the big questions that people ask is, okay, how do tech companies make money? Now, we'll be talking about that in a different video altogether. That's a different video, but for now, briefly, there are different models. Okay, there's something called SaaS, there's something called PaaS. Now, it's not PaaS, it's PaaS, which stands for Product as a Service, or Software as a Service. Basically, something like Netflix. So you go on a subscription model, and then you keep paying the company to be able to, so that the company is able to maintain those services and be able to deliver and update their products and services. And that's how they keep the product or the service alive, fresh, and sustained. So there are several models, right? So anyways, to keep the product or the service going, they need to like, the business model on the internet is actually very different, right? Now, it's not just the business model, but let's say, for example, let's take the SaaS model as an example. Let's take Spotify as an example. How many people actually really pay for the Spotify premium service? I'm not exactly sure because I didn't look up the statistics, but I'm pretty sure, I'm prepared to bet that more than 50% of the people are not paying for the service, and most of the people are accessing Spotify via the free version or the free membership. So one of the things you need to ask is, okay, well, look at PayPal in India. Like, PayPal in India didn't even work. And a lot of internet, like the internet payments company, couldn't work in India. And so it's not just the business side, but even the usability side. Like, a lot of people don't want to pay for apps, like especially in the African and South Asian subcontinent, because first of all, the banking side or the debit cards don't accept those transactions, first of all, and secondly, people don't trust, and thirdly, a lot of people still use cash in some regions, right? Like, India is going cashless now. That's where I'm from, by the way, just if you're wondering why I'm using the example. But in general, the reason why a lot of regions don't use services or use certain services or products is because of different things. Like, this is not just something that you can Google on the internet. Okay, tell me about India, tell me about North Korea. Okay, well, North Koreans eat sushi. Not really, right? Japanese people eat sushi, but just because sushi is a Japanese dish, you can't accept stereotypes, and that's why when you're creating a business and running a business on the internet, you need to have diversity of let's say culture, so that you understand not just the obvious things or the things that you can find on the internet, but also the metaphorical language of those cultures or of those societies. So, for example, in India, one of the ways you sort of signal acknowledgement, which when I came to Sweden here, I was surprised that it's not the case anywhere outside of India, actually. So it's also funny to know that it's not even a culture outside of, like, even in Pakistan or the neighboring Indian countries. So the idea of shaking your head like this, all right, is actually a sign that okay, you understood, or like this is actually okay, okay, and this obviously this is no, but I mean, Indians have a lot of language or non-verbal language through just the head, and I mean, in this video I'm not showing my hands or things, but hands or my body, but you can understand, right? Like, there's a lot of languages like this. Now, this is like, yes, you can find those information on the internet, but only if you know that these things exist, right? So, I mean, if you know that this exists, then you can go on the internet and Google for all those stuff. But anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is that if you want to reach a country, it's not enough to just Google Translate all those your app to a different language and you can launch that. Sometimes it's not simple. Sometimes features don't work. Sometimes people find things offensive. Sometimes things are not taken in the same way. For example, another example would be, let's say, for example, asking a girl, like, okay, looks like you're 22. Why aren't you married? Now, in some cultures, that's perceived as normal and something that's perceived as you're asking a girl why isn't she married? That's an offensive thing to ask in a lot of countries. Like obviously it's subjective. I'm not saying this is the case for everybody in every country, but even in the countries that sort of are more open-ended and sort of let's say in Western societies in general, yes, you do find people like that as well, but people will find that offensive. But it turns out this is a like sort of a very interesting conversation creator in some cultures. I'm not saying that's the case in my culture, but I'm just saying, you guys, in general, that there are weird societies that exist, and the jokes and everything kind of change. And these things are essential to the tech companies because it's sometimes these subtle things that are ignored, and they cost a lot for tech companies, because you can go on and keep building features and stuff like the technologies, but if it doesn't matter to people, it doesn't matter why you're building or if you're building it. All right, so that's the reason why tech companies, like diversity in tech companies, is extremely crucial. That's the positive side of why, on the motivation of diversity. In general, and that's the case why in tech companies that's important, and I don't think that is the case necessarily the case with, let's say, like physical companies. Now, I mean, you can travel to a company, like travel to places and find out the culture and then come back here and then design a physical product, because you're not going to be updating it. And if you expand to a different country, you can talk to people, you can build a product, ship it, and and then you're done, right? Like, physical products don't have to be like always updated like that, at least. Okay, so all these products that don't have or need remote maintenance, don't need that kind of diversity. All right, that's first. And secondly, let's talk about the criticisms that that diversity in tech companies face. It's because it's more on the tech companies. That's why tech companies face. But in general, diversity in like the racial diversity or national diversity or whatever that like diversity based on color and stuff. The reason why it's criticized is for actually reasons that a lot of people don't even think. Now, first things first, that if you go and apply to a tech company, they would actually ask you to which race you belong to. And yes, you have the option to not specify which race you belong to. And actually, that actually serves against your favor sometimes. Because if you look at some companies, they proudly display their statistics and say, in our company we have like 30% Indians and 30% Americans and 10% Japanese and I mean Asians and like 20% Africans and I don't know, it just goes on like that. So basically they divide the, let's say that their company into groups of nationalities or whatever else that is, okay, like cultures, race, sexual orientation, whatever that is. Now, like 50-50%, so they have to maintain that sort of diversity, like that diversity at any cost. And the people who criticize this diversity, what they say is that diversity solely based on your identification or your group identification is actually fundamentally racist, because you're putting people inside groups and then you're basically telling, if you're an Indian, for example, and funnily enough, if you actually go to these American tech companies and if you look at these people who say equal opportunity provider, I don't know if all of them use the same piece of software or if this is some kind of a design principle or something, but I don't find like people like in the drop down it says, are you an Indian or are you an Asian? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, India is in Asia, by the way, for those of you who don't know. So, India is an Asian country. So, and some of the times they say American Indian or Asian. Okay, that's a really confusing thing for someone like me, because I'm an Indian, like I was born in India. Yes, I'm in Sweden, but I can't say Swedish Indian because that doesn't exist. And I'm going back to India anyway, so things like these exist. Now, the question that comes up is, okay, so if you want to maintain like racial equality, or I'm sorry, racial or nationalistic or religional or sexual diversity, one of the things that happens is you group people, like you say, okay, so you belong to X, Y, and Z identity. Therefore, you must be worthy, or therefore you must not be worthy. And in our tech company right now, we need somebody who is, let's say, a Caucasian and who is a transgender and who has X kind of views, because we don't have those kinds of people in our tech company. And then, like, let's say for example, some like Southeast Asian guy walks into your company with some exceptional skills, and then you say, "Oh, we already have enough of you kind of people. We're not gonna take you." Because, well, obviously they don't say this up front, but a lot of times this is the criticisms that people say. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's short-sightedness, but at least I would count this as a possibility. It is definitely a case for a lot of companies, like, don't mistake me. But what the people on the other side of the spectrum don't understand is that diversity based on, let's say, religion or place or whatever that is, it also sort of matters for a different reason than just making sure, okay, just because in the company we don't have, like, we need to have Indians, we need to have Asians, and that's sort of like, showing that portfolio or their statistics, or for the sake of statistics, or for the sake of, for the records, like, other than for these reasons, um, there are actually reasons. Like, I mean, I'm not saying people don't do that. There are people who do it for these reasons. But what I am saying is that there are also people on the other side who use it for reasons such as, like, okay, now if you're going to reach out to, let's say, the minorities in a specific, let's say, in a specific country, because they, let's say, they tend, they based on your analysis, these people will generate you a lot, like, will generate a lot of profits for your company. If that is the case, then you need to make a product that sort of solves their problems. Like, you need to make them feel at home, and the way you do that is if you can find somebody from that particular region to join your company, then that will be a very interesting, will be a very interesting project for the tech company as well. So I wanted to sort of like, give you both sides of the picture, and I want to say you that both these pictures actually exist. Like, there are people who only hire people solely based on, okay, a company needs to have, I don't know, like, at this time, because Black Lives Matters is is a movement. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying I don't stand with it. I obviously, by the way, yes, obviously, Black lives do matter. Before you go on commenting anything like that, what I'm trying to say here, the point I'm trying to get to, is that, solely giving anybody, let's say, privilege just because you belong to any color, or anything, just because of the statistics or for the records, or to show people that you have these kinds of people, it it sort of is discrimination, and racism, or whatever you want to call it. That's more racist than what you're trying to fight against. So, and this sort of is, this is actually the reason why the opposite side says, and I hope I have sort of provided a picture. But something, if you belong to the other side, if you think that this is the whole perspective, it's not. And I wanted to give you the other side, and the other side is that, as somebody in the tech industry, I will say you that diversity is actually important. Diversity of thought, like you thinking differently, yes, diversity of thought is important. Is diversity of, thought process. Like, some people are visual thinkers, some people think literally, some people are open-minded, some people are extroverts, some people are introverts, some people are, yes, all those matter. Yes, that also matters for internet companies, for tech companies, because of the nature of these companies, and because of what challenges they are tasked with. These companies need to make sure that they hire people from different cultures, so that they are able to create a product or a service that is universally usable. And that's why some companies actually go for diversity. And so, yeah, I think I made my point. So if you guys have any questions, comments, or suggestions, leave them in the comment section below, and I shall see you guys in another video very soon.